Donald Trump continues his crusade to crack down on what's in his mind alleged voter fraud by signing an executive order to create a new commission to investigate so-called voter fraud. Vice President Mike Pence will lead the Presidential Commission on Election Integrity. The Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, who supports strict voter ID laws and is considered one of America's biggest supporters of voter suppression, will serve as vice chair. The panel will study weaknesses in the voting system and how that impacts improper voting and voter fraud. Countless studies have shown voter fraud rarely occurs in the U.S. Critics say the commission will only justify voter suppression in minority communities, but the Trump administration says the panel will help fix the system. Really?
The commission will review policies and practices that enhance or undermine the American people's confidence in the integrity of federal elections and provide the president with a report that identifies system vulnerabilities that lead to improper registrations and voting.
I think we might as well go ahead and play this when it comes to when they lie. We could play that nearly through this entire show. The reality is Donald Trump lied about massive voter fraud taking place in New Hampshire. It was so embarrassing, the lie, that even Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, the Republican governor of New Hampshire, other Republicans came out and said there was no evidence of voter fraud when Trump said folks were crossing state lines going from Massachusetts and voting in New Hampshire. This president loves to lie. Meanwhile, the resignation of the director of the U.S. Census Bureau, John Thompson, is raising some eyebrows. Thompson, who has served as director since 2013, plans to leave June 30th. His resignation comes as the agency is facing a crisis over funding for the 2020 count of the U.S. population. But some say his resignation could have a larger impact on the population and politics. Joining me on the phone from Boston to talk about this is Pam Wilmot, Executive Director of Common Cause Massachusetts, a nonpartisan group that fights for fair representation and against corruption in government. Pam, bottom line is this here. You have too many Republicans who fight with Democrats over how we count people for the census. We know that the census, the 2020 count, determines congressional shifts in terms of representation. We saw in the last census, Texas picked up 5 seats. Other states lost the seats were based upon population. This issue over lack of funding will have a direct impact on how many people are counted, and this affects minorities more than anybody else.
Absolutely. Having an accurate count is key to so many government services, and urban populations and actually very dispersed populations can be difficult to count. The Census Bureau needs full funding, and we need to really engage people in that process. The resignation is very concerning. There's a lot of experience. The Census Bureau is going to be lost. And then, of course, the funding is the reason that we're seeing this now. So Common Cause is very concerned about that. We're also very concerned about this alleged voter integrity commission. It's really a voter suppression commission, as you mentioned in your introduction. These are two very concerning developments that aren't getting the same kind of news that the Comey resignation has, which is, in fact, part of their purpose, distract and then undermine real potential issues that have a way of bringing people into the political process for political gain, frankly.
And bottom line, Pam, is, again, when you hear this commission, which is an absolute joke, it is Donald Trump trying to figure out how to support his lies. He literally, throughout this accusation of 3 to 5 million people voting illegally, he has absolutely no evidence of this. He lied about people voting illegally in New Hampshire, and you had Republicans who slapped him down on his lie.
Absolutely. Governor Sununu was out there. New Hampshire has a very tough system, as do almost do all states. I mean, Republicans have spent millions and millions of dollars over decades trying to find voter fraud, and they have essentially come up with nothing. Yet this lie is being used to suppress the vote, to give credence to voter suppression laws, tough voter IDs. In fact, Kobach was one that pushed through requiring proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. Those can be expensive documents to obtain. Most of us don't have that at our fingertips, and as a result, Kansas voter turnout, especially in low-income communities, has been depressed. You expand that across the country, and we could see just a disaster for democracy. This is bait and switch. It is a way of taking an illusory problem and then using it for political gain, because when low-income communities are suppressed, that tends to benefit a certain political party. It's cynical, it is wrong, and it's very upsetting.
All right, Pam, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, I will start with you, Barbara Arnwine. Again, more Trump lies. He lied about New Hampshire, and Republicans had to smack him down. I mean, this is what we have, the liar in chief.
Well, listen, you either believe that our American government is going to be a government for all the people and that everyone who is eligible to vote can vote, or are you going to support this whole voter suppression movement, which is designed to shrink the electorate so that only the people that you want to vote, vote? So this is the issue. And Chris Kobach, I'm sorry to report, if people don't know who he is the architect of cross-check, which is a purging program across the country. We took him to court, all the way to the Supreme Court, where he lost because he was engaging in illegally imposing upon the National Voter Registration Form a proof of citizenship requirement. Last year, right before the election, a federal judge, again, a judge, I'm sorry if it's a state judge, but I believe it was a federal judge, intervened and stopped him again from imposing additional registration requirements on voters, said that over 18,000 people would have been banned from voting because of this illegal action. Chris Kobach is the wrong person to be the vice chair. He is a serial voter suppressor. How dare this president, how dare him step on the sacrifices, the blood sacrifices of generations of African Americans who fought for our voting rights. We're not going to sit back and take this. We're fighting.
All right, Reynard, defend his lie.
You and I have been talking for years, and Barbara, there is no such thing as voter suppression. You, again, are getting these checks from the DNC. Because if that was the case, how do you explain in 2012 with Obama's last election, black folks for the first time in the history of this country outvoted white folks?
And then 66%. The year after that, they
and then Roland, you believe in voter ID too? Because why in the heck do I have to show my ID to get into the
Reynard,
2016.
Reynard, I deal with facts. Right. And here's the reality. After the 2008 election of President Barack Obama in the state of North Carolina, the Republican legislature, your Republican legislature, put into effect one of those onerous voter suppression laws in American history. What they did was they actually removed early voting locations from college campuses because they said, oh, they vote overwhelmingly Democrat.
That's
in
not
fact, what they also
Roland.
did was, no, excuse me, voter suppression, Reynard, is when the Republicans in North Carolina,
yes.
Reynard, when the Republicans in North Carolina asked for the voting data when black people voted, and actually 3 judges said there was a laser-like focus on African Americans. 4 federal judges, Reynard, in Texas, said there was a discriminatory intent
and
when
I
it came to
told you I
voter
agree
ID
with those
law.
judges' decisions.
No, Reynard, that is voter suppression.
No, voter inconvenience.
Renard can try to spin it all he wants to, but we know voter suppression, Jamira, when we see it.
No, I fully agree. And to say that there is voter fraud, it's not just a myth, it's a lie. It's a lie that he continues to have pushed throughout the entire campaign. But now, as president, the Brennan Center did a study a few years ago that actually showed that most cases of voter fraud was just an error or bad data. The voter fraud is 0.003% chance of actually occurring. So I think it's funny that the president keeps saying that millions of people voted illegally. If that's the case, then that should put his entire presidency, the legitimacy of his presidency, in jeopardy, and we should do a recount, if not a revote.
And it's dangerous.
Renard, defend this. Renard, defend this. Defend when Texas went to the federal court. No, Renard,
showed that I agree with you on those 3 states.
Renard, you keep saying voter suppression is a myth.
You picked 3 states out of 50, Roland, really? 3 out of 50.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Renard, we know for a fact if voter ID was allowed to move forward in the state of Wisconsin,
Roland,
but then a federal judge,
ID to get into your building to do your show.
Renard,
you don't have to allow.
Renard, a federal judge called Governor Scott Walker's office in and said, why are you slowly issuing voter IDs? We now know after the election that 200,000 people in Wisconsin were impacted by its voter ID law. Are you still going to defend this nonsense?
So, Roland, if Pookie wants to do your show and he doesn't have an ID, he can't get into this building. Why did you say that?
Without a license.
And that's not
no, you got to have a government ID to get into this building.
That's not the right to vote. Listen.
Oh, wow.
Constitutional right.
It's voter ID.
And when you talk about people, quote, being inconvenienced, what we're talking about is hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, I'd say it's about 1.5 million people who were denied the right to vote in 2016. Let's be very clear. And that's not an inconvenience. That's a loss of a right you never can get again.
Yep.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.